I am Laura Cloninger, Membership and Event Coordinator for AME. I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Our presenter today is Dr. Elizabeth Lombardo. Welcome. With a master's degree in physical therapy and a PhD in clinical psychology, Dr. Elizabeth Lombardo, Dr. E as her clients call her, seeks to transform empirical research into digestible bites of information the audience can apply in their own life. As a speaker and trainer known as America's most trusted celebrity psychologist, Dr. E is a regular contributor to media outlets such as The Today Show, Good Morning America, Forbes, and Health. Before we start, a few housekeeping items. You are on listen-only mode. You will see you are muted. If you have any questions, please type them in the question box and we will review the questions at the end of the webinar. Now I am pleased to introduce Dr. Elizabeth Lombardo. Take it away, Dr. E.
Thank you so much. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Yes, we were talking about how to stay sane during insane times. Before we get started, what I'd love to know from you is how ready are you to be part of this, to be present in this webinar? You have a lot going on right now. You're probably home. Maybe you got kids, you got dogs, you got a project. So in the chat box from 1 to 7, 1 is I am not listening to you at all, and 7 is my entire mind, body, and spirit is with you and in this presentation. No judgment. Just put a number as to where you are in terms of mentally ready to jump into this. Oh, we got 6s and 5s and 8s, which is great, and 9s because it was only 2-7, which means you're really excited, which makes me happy. All right, so we got some high numbers here, which is wonderful, wonderful. So today, you know, I'm going to be completely transparent. I'm a little greedy, okay? And by that, I mean, I want this time together. I want for you to learn some new stuff, hopefully be entertained a little. Sometimes I think I'm kind of funny, but really my goal is for you to create your own action plan to optimize your current life, right? So I want you to take the information we're talking about, and then I want you to actually write down, that's an idea, here's how I'm going to apply it in my life. How many times have we heard people speak or heard a quote or read a book and thought, it changed my life. And then life went on the way it was before. I don't want that to happen with us. So I want to make sure that as you're listening, you're thinking about, okay, how does that apply in my life? How can I use this tool, this strategy in my life? Now, I don't have to tell you, there's some stress going on right now, right? Whether it's economic stress or you're homeschooling your children, or you have a teenager or a partner who doesn't feel the need to shower during quarantine. Maybe your partner, I married you for dinner, not breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Running out of toilet paper, or now it's flour, I think. The overwhelm of what's going on, uncertainty, and working from home. Whether you used to work at home from home and now you can't kind of go out and get those outlets that you had before, or this is new for you to be working at home. There's some unique stressors that we're dealing with. And so what I want to talk about is first the impact of stress, because stress can be very impactful to us, sometimes in ways we don't realize, and then how we can overcome that so that we can stay sane. So when we talk about stress, some stress is good, but a little stress, acute stress, can motivate us to make change. If you put your hand on a stove and it burns, right? That's enough stress for you to take away your finger. That's a good thing. But what happens is when stress becomes chronic, right? When it becomes chronic and high levels for a long period of time, that can actually wreak havoc on every single facet of our lives. So just briefly looking at emotional well-being, right? Your level of distress. We know that when we have greater stress, things like depression and anxiety get stronger. Feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, worthlessness, guilt, shame, all of that amplifies when we experience chronic stress. Our physical health. There's a whole field of research called PNI, psychoneuroimmunology. Psycho, not meaning you're crazy, but just really kind of the impact of stress on our nervous system and our immune system. And we know, for example, that when we have high levels of stress for a long period of time, our body can't fight off pathogens as well, right? We're more susceptible to illnesses because our immune system isn't functioning as well. I know, our stress can come in our bodies. I know when I was defending my dissertation or preparing my dissertation, I was working, I worked, it's my own research and then I'm writing it up. Months and months and months of this. And as it was coming towards the end, I remember walking by a mirror and this is how I looked. right? All of the tension was in my neck. I didn't even realize it, right? Until I saw myself in the mirror, and I was like, oh yeah, that neck's been hurting. So maybe for you, the stress is coming somewhere in your body, headaches, backaches, that kind of thing. And we also know not only does the stress impact our bodies biologically, but it also can impact our bodies behaviorally, right? When we're stressed, how likely are we to reach for a fresh garden salad? Probably not, right? We go for the comfort food. So that impacts our physical health as well as impacting our sleep. And we'll talk more about that. Relationships. I don't know about you, but when I'm stressed out, I'm not always very pleasant, right? So our stress can impact our relationships with our loved ones, with our family, with our friends, with our colleagues. And then of course, work, right? A stressed brain, and we'll talk more about this, a stressed brain is not a productive brain. Before all this happened, we know that stress costs US companies $300 billion with a B dollars annually on things like turnover, absenteeism, healthcare utilization, presenteeism, which is when you're there, but you're not really there, right? So there's a huge cost of stress on our work and on our productivity. So that's really the reason why we want to look at this. And unfortunately, there are going to be there's the potential to have long-term effects of this. You know, some people are saying, once the doors open, everything will be great. Well, a recent study came out in Lancet that showed the long-term impact of quarantine. Not our quarantine, because we haven't really studied that yet, but the long-term impact in terms of acute stress, in terms of trauma, in terms of anger, frustration, confusion, how it affects us mentally and emotionally. There are long-term effects of this. So we want to make sure that we are really addressing what's going on. Now, hold on a sec, I'm sorry. If I had mute, I would have hit mute. There's a lot going on right now. And if you are experiencing heightened levels of distress, here's what I want to say to you. Be strong and get help, okay? Be strong and get help. What do I mean by that? Sometimes people are like, I got to handle this by myself. I got to pull my bootstraps up, pull myself up by my bootstraps, or whatever that saying is. Let me ask you a question. If you were having a heart attack, would you be like, got this? Yep, nope, got this all on my own. Having a stroke, I got this. No, you would reach out for help. It takes more courage, especially when it comes to stress and stress-related issues. It takes more courage to reach out and get help than it does just to kind of try to deal with it yourself. So I'm just going to offer a couple of resources. If you feel like, you know what, I'm past the mark of this is tough to this is serious, here's some resources I want to share with you. The first is the disaster distress hotline. It is 24/7. If you even think, I wonder if I should call, okay, or reach out to someone. If you're thinking, I don't know if this is big enough, it is big enough. Because if you are even considering that you might talk to someone, please. That's the first resource. The second resource, online-therapy.com, is online therapy. I know you didn't realize that. It's online therapy. And I am actually the chief learning officer of this company. Online-therapy.com is an opportunity for you to meet with therapists from your home, wherever you are, and to work through some whatever it is that you're dealing with. It also has an extra component that none of the other websites out there that have the therapy online, they don't have this, and it's training. It's training on something called cognitive behavioral therapy, kind of some of the stuff we're going to look at today, how our thoughts impact how we feel and what we do. And there's a whole training, understanding how your mind works, how to make your mind work for you instead of against you. There's training, there's guided, there's visualizations, meditations, and there's yoga. And I share that with you because right now, all of that training, not the meeting with the therapist because we have to pay them, but all of that training we are offering for absolutely free. So if you're like, you know what, I don't need to talk to someone necessarily, but I could use some more support in this online-therapy, it is a great, I say it's a great resource because I actually do the training. So of course I like it. I think that you'll like it too. It'll be very helpful. So I want to make sure you have these resources now for you, for your loved ones, right? If someone in your family, you kind of feel like they're struggling, make sure you share this with them so that we can really all help each other. Now, this is a picture of my grandmother. And she was really a dotty old woman. She was funny as could be, which is why I think this picture is so perfect for her. It was obviously Christmas. There's a Christmas tree behind her, and it's not this was way before HD pictures, but she's wearing earmuffs because I guess she had gotten earmuffs for Christmas. And I never noticed until recently that there's a big old bottle of wine next to her, which is probably why she was so funny, but that's another conversation. Anyway, her hands are up like this. Now, my grandmother by training was a psychiatric nurse. Right? She was in mental health, and like most of us in mental health, she was a little crazy. But the reason why I love this picture is because she also was an incredible piano player. And even though my grandmother never actually graduated from university, she taught a college course that she entitled How to Play the Piano Despite Years of Practice. So think about that. How to play the piano despite years of practice. So what she'd do is she would work with her students, and she'd look at them playing, and she'd help them get rid of the habits that they were using that weren't working, right? And she would teach them the skills that would help them play effectively. And then they would practice that. And as you can imagine, if you get rid of what doesn't work, you learn what does work, and you practice that, what happens? You can't help but get better. So she used to help people play the piano despite years of practice. I say I help people be sane despite years of practice, because all of us probably have some skills that are helpful, but we probably have some skills that aren't so helpful either. And this isn't about judgment, it's just about where we are. So my goal is to really teach you the skills so that then you can practice them on your own so that they can become habits in your life. You know, some people say, you know what? I'm just gonna wait till, we're allowed out and then everything will be fine. Well, I just share with you research that demonstrates that's probably not really true. It reminds me of a toothache. When my first child, who's now 15, was born, a couple of weeks into it, she had colic, she was screaming all the time, and I was a new mother and thinking I had to do everything myself, and it was an overwhelming time. And I remember I got a toothache. And I was like, I do not have time to have a toothache right now, right? I got a new baby, I got to feed, and everything going on. So I tried to ignore it, but as a toothache sometimes does, it didn't get any better, and it got worse. And it got so bad that one Saturday afternoon, the dentist, God bless him, actually opened up his practice. It was closed, opened it up just for me because the pain was so excruciating. And he said to me, he looked at me, he's like, well, we're gonna have to do a root canal. And I was like, well, how long is that gonna take? I can't be away from my baby for 2 hours. He's like, well, it's a root canal or pull it. I said, pull the tooth, right? So now I have a gaping hole in my mouth where that tooth was. But just like a toothache that we try to push off and it gets worse, if we don't address our stress now, it could get worse, and it's likely to get worse. And when I'm talking about our stress, I mean individually your stress. I mean the stress in your home, in your personal life, your friends and family, and within your place of business, your work, your organization. The skills that we're going to talk about are absolutely vital for all of those groups. I literally just got off a training, and it was with about 100, I think we had 122 CEOs, and we were talking about the importance of bringing these skills into the workplace. The new normal of leadership is going to be really highlighting emotional intelligence, vulnerability, and addressing the stress. Because as we'll talk about in a minute, a stressed brain is not an effective brain. So you're going to be learning skills today. And before we finish, I have a gift for you. So just want to let you know that a gift will be coming if you are interested in receiving the gift. So you'll find out a little bit more about that in a moment. All right, let's talk about this concept called learned helplessness. Learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is when we are in a place where we feel like there's nothing I can do. And it can induce a lot of stress. In the 70s, there was a study with dogs, and I'm not equating you with a dog, but we couldn't do this with humans. Psychologists probably couldn't do it with dogs anymore either. So this was the study. They randomly assigned dogs to 3 different groups. The first group, every time a dog hit a lever, it got food. Had food, hit it a couple times, ate the food, satiated, pranced off, happy as could be. The second time, every time they hit the lever, they got a shock, a painful stimulus. They hit the lever once and maybe twice, figured out that's not for me, pranced off, happy as could be. The third group of dogs, every time they hit the lever, they either got food or shock, but there was no rhyme or reason, right? There was no predictability. They didn't have control over it. And those dogs actually ended up laying down in the corner, not really responsive, such that if you brought the dog food, and if you've ever given dog food, it almost always eats it, the dog wouldn't even eat it. Why? Because this had actually induced a state of depression in these dogs. Now, again, you're not a dog, and learned helplessness is a very powerful occurrence that's going on in our society right now. This notion of there's nothing I can do. And not only does that increase distress, but it prevents us from solving problems effectively. It makes me think of this video.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's nothing else left to do, is it?
Okay, so obviously they were in a place of learned helplessness, right? There's nothing I can do. What did they need to do to solve their problem? Take a couple steps forward, right? It's always easier to solve other people's problems, isn't it? But when they're in that mindset of helplessness, we feel stuck. Now, what if instead of being stuck on an escalator, you were stuck on an elevator? Think about that, because that's a different experience, right? My brother-in-law was stuck on an elevator, 31st floor in New York City in a building. And this was way before cell phones. And he, as luck or unluck would have it, he was stuck with another individual. And that individual was a woman he had taken out on a date once who literally hated him. I don't know why, she couldn't stand him. They've now been married for 31 years. It's my sister-in-law. But so that worked out well, but it doesn't, we're not always stuck with people we like. But think about it. If you're stuck on an elevator, and you start feeling panicky, you start feeling anxiety, what can you do? Go ahead and put in the chat box. What can you do if you are stuck on an elevator and you're feeling stressed out? So as you're typing in, you may think things like, well, I could hit the alarm button, right? I could call 911. And that would be one focus, one strategy of problem focus. Great. So Serena said using breathing techniques. Exactly. Taking deep breaths, maybe calling a friend, watching a video on your phone to distract you, taking deep breaths. Great. So what that calls us to pay attention to is this notion that there are always two ways to handle a problem. There are always two main strategies. And those are problem focus, changing what's happening, and emotion focus, which is changing our emotional reaction to it, right? So, so problem focus would be calling 911. Emotion focus would be changing, taking the deep breaths like you all were talking about. And why this is so important to remember is we are never helpless. We are never helpless in a situation, even if we can't change the problem itself. So in my own life, I'll tell you how we apply this. My husband, the love of my life, we've been married for over half of my life, 5 years ago was diagnosed with a terminal illness, such that when we were at the Mayo Clinic, they literally told us, take him home to prepare. No, try this treatment. I don't know, this might help. None of that. So after the shock of that experience, we came home and we started saying, well, what can we do? Right? Because the antidote to helplessness is just to ask the question, what can I do? What can we do? And as we were asking that question, we started off in the problem focus, and we started researching other healthcare professionals, other medical doctors who treated this disorder that my husband has. And that was very helpful, right? In fact, we did 10 months for 10 months, every single day, I gave him 6 IVs a day. It was a lot. He got better. He got a lot better. And then things started declining, and he's actually been on a ventilator now for over 3 years. So his health has been declining. So we still looking at, is there a way we can address the problem, his disease? But we're also focused on that emotion-focused coping. How can we be present with him? How can we enjoy this time with him? Because we don't know how much time we have. How can we be in a state of gratitude and be really mindful of being together? And so that's that emotion-focused coping. And what's important to realize, again, is there are always options whenever you are faced with a problem. And so what I want to do with the rest of our time together is really look at this notion of problem-focused versus emotion-focused coping within the realm of this pandemic. So problem-focused strategies, for example, social distancing, right? Staying home prevents the spread. Using the cure. Now it's been, maybe 6 weeks? When this first started and things started closing, so it was a really long time ago, I work with a lot of organizations, companies, they bring me in to talk about this. And I was one of the panel speakers, and the other panel speaker was a medical doctor, public policy at a Johns Hopkins. And he was saying, people keep asking about the cure, we need to get the cure. He said, we have the cure, it's called soap, use it, right? So soap literally will get rid of that. It doesn't, please do not consume it, right? But it'll kill it on contact. So use the cure. Stop touching your face. We're all realizing how much face touching we do. If for you a stressor, a problem is finances, then a problem-focused approach to that would be to set up a budget. Advance your career. If you're concerned about maybe the stability of your job, this could be a great time to advance your career. What do I mean by that? Maybe there's training, certifications that you can be pursuing. This is a great time to be networking, to reaching out to your peers, to people who are higher up on the ladder, to your team, really reaching out and connecting. I truly believe that it's the individuals who reach out and connect, who support each other, who are going to be moving forward the leaders of the new normal. Because our new normal, our leadership is going to be quite different. And so really reaching out and just talking to people. How are you doing? And maybe somebody in your organization, in your company, in your business that you don't really know that well. That's okay. This is a time where there's a lot of grace. And so maybe reaching out and saying, hey, would love to have a cup of coffee with you on a Zoom call. Are you available? So advancing your career. And then creating meaningful goals. If boredom is one of the things that you're struggling with, and boredom can be very real. And when I say real, I mean it can really impact our mental health. Creating meaningful goals. We know from the research in positive psychology that goals that are moderately difficult and meaningful are the ones that are going to bring us the most joy. So is there something that you want to do, whether it's in your career or learning something new, trying something new, but creating meaningful goals can be really helpful to addressing boredom. So that's the problem focus. And again, a lot of times when we think about a problem, we focus on how to change the nature of it, how to get rid of that problem. What I really want to look at today with you is emotion-focused strategies, right? How can we change our emotional reaction to what's going on so that you can stay sane during insane times? So we're going to look at a couple different tactics, right, within this strategy of emotion-focused coping. And those tactics are getting out of the red zone. If you're a football fan, it has nothing to do with that. Being proactive, change your glasses, change your what if to what if. I'll explain that in a minute. Be assertive, start with the end, and embrace being better than perfect. So we're going to look at each one of these and really see how we can apply it to your life. So let's start with this concept of the red zone. Distress in psychology is any emotion you don't want, right? We throw that in the distress pile. It could be sadness, anger, frustration, guilt, shame, overwhelm, worry, helplessness, hopelessness, worthlessness. All of that goes in the distress pile. And distress is on a continuum. It's not like I'm feeling distressed or I'm not. It's on a continuum from 0 to 10. 0 distress is no distress at all, right? You just got off the massage table. Life is great. 10 out of 10 is the most distressed you've ever been. So if you're feeling anger, for example, at a 10 out of 10, you may be yelling, or the proverbial steam may be coming out of your ears, right? So think about it. You're hopefully not at 10 a whole lot, and you're probably not at 0 a whole lot either. So my question to you is this. Think about over the past week, what has been your average level of distress? Your average level of distress. And just go ahead and put it in the chat box so we can see where you are. What has been your average level of distress? From 0, not at all, till 10. Okay, so we got a 6, a 7, a 6, 6, so pretty high. And as you keep putting these in, I would love to know where your average level of stress is, 5 over the past week. Realizing that throughout the day, right, our level of distress changes, right? So depending on what's going on, right? If you're watching the news and it's bad news, that could be increasing your distress. Who you're with. There's certain people who I bet in your life who you're with, either physically or having an interaction with them, where they just calm you. And other people, they just send you through the roof, right? Mother-in-laws, I'm just saying, maybe. Your physiology, right? When we're tired, we tend to have more distress, right? When we're hungry, we've probably all heard the term hangry, right? When we're hungry, that increases our distress. So there are different variables that increase our distress. It's really important that we become aware of what level of distress we are at. And here's why. Our brain actually functions differently according to where we are on this scale. Okay, so when you're in the green zone, when your distress level is at a 0, 1, or 2, you're using more of your frontal lobe, right? The structure that differentiates you from other animals. It allows you to engage in executive functioning, perspective taking, problem solving, right? When we're in the green zone, we can see all different perspectives. When you're in the green zone and your partner or your child or a team member does something that's kind of annoying, you're like, it's just who they are. Okay? As we go up on the distress scale though, our perspective narrows such that when you get into the red zone, when I get into the red zone, when we all get into the red zone, we tend to focus more on what's wrong. In psychology, we call it negative filtering, where we focus almost exclusively on what's wrong, and everything positive, yeah, but this is what's wrong. When you're in the red zone and that thing that your partner or your child or your team member did in the green zone, and you're like, that's just who they are. When you're in the red zone, you want to strangle them, right? Or you personalize what they're doing. So when we're in that red zone, we tend to focus on what's wrong. We tend to personalize what's going on. And there's actually a biological reason for this. Because when you're in the red zone, when we are in the red zone, we're using less of a frontal lobe, rational thinking, and more of our limbic system, right? That fight or flight, that emotional reasoning. And when your limbic system hijacks your rational thinking, we don't always think clearly. We don't always act in a way that's consistent with who we want to be. I always tell my coaching clients, if you're at a 7 out of 10 or higher, if you're in the red zone, don't let anything out of your mouth. Because that's when you say things you later regret, right? And don't put anything in your mouth because that's when we consume things we later regret. Hashtag quarantine 15, you may have been hearing about. So it's really important that we understand this differentiation because we see things differently. Yesterday, we lost a high schooler in my town to suicide. And I am very concerned about how this pandemic and the continuation of it is going to be impacting not just our teens, but all of us. When someone is at a 10 out of 10 and they feel so helpless and just so like there's hopeless, that's the #1 predictor of suicide, that they can't do anything. When they're at a 10 out of 10, the only thing that they can see is getting out of this. We need to help ourselves. We need to help our family members. We need to help our team get out of the red zone and stay out of the red zone, okay? So it has to do not only with our being here, but also in terms of our ability to function, right? Our ability to work. A stressed brain cannot focus. It is not productive. And so your team, if your team is in the red zone, you're not going to be getting anything out of them. If, in terms of work, we can't really function. We can't be in a place of problem solving and engagement when we're in the red zone. So our goal is to get out of the red zone. So when you notice yourself creeping up into the red zone, right? At a 6 out of 10 or higher, I want you to stop and do something healthy and helpful to reduce that distress. What can you do? One of the best ways to do this is to just move your body, right? We call it changing your state. Go for a walk, jump on the bed, do a minute of push-ups, sit-ups, squats. I have one of those personalized, those small trampolines in my office, my house right now. And sometimes when my kids, especially when they're working on their math homework and they're feeling really frustrated and they notice themselves creeping up into that red zone, they'll come and they'll jump on the trampoline because they know that once they get into that yellow zone or back into the green zone, they're better able to deal with their math problems. So what can you do that distress to keep you out of the red zone? Moving your body is one thing. Changing your breathing, right? Deep breathing can be effective. Spending time with a loved one. For me, I love my family and my puppy, who's kind of a hairy rat, but I call him a puppy. He is in fact a dog. You know, spending time with my dog, just playing with him for a couple minutes, gets me out of the red zone. Laughter can be great. So there are a couple comedians who I find hysterical. And so I have another computer over here. I will get on YouTube. If I'm feeling myself creeping up into the red zone, I'll get on my computer and get on YouTube and just watch a video of them. That laughter helps us get out of the red zone. So think about what can you do when you notice yourself creeping up to get out of the red zone. This will help your emotional well-being. It will help your physical health, right? It will certainly help your relationships, and it's really going to be vital at work. This is also a conversation to be having with your teams. Right? I'm working with, again, establishing the new norm in leadership, asking teams, where are you right now? Right? And if anyone's at a 6 out of 10 or higher, what can we do to make sure that we're in a safer zone so that we can be more productive in this team? It's going to be very, very helpful. So that's getting into the red zone. That's what I would call reactive stress management. When you notice yourself creeping up, doing something healthy and helpful to get out of it. And then there's proactive stress management. Right? Proactive means what are you doing on a regular basis to keep that average level of stress down, right? And I share with my coaching clients this concept of 3 by 5. 3 times a day for at least 5 minutes, do something healthy and helpful to address your stress. And it's at least 5 minutes. And what I want to encourage you to do is to actually put it in your phone, right? How many times have we thought, meditation, that would be great. Yes, I'm going to do that. And next week comes and you're like, I'm going to meditate, right? Because life gets in the way. But if you actually schedule it out, at least 5 minutes, 3 times a day, then that's going to help it become part of your habit. So what kinds of things can you do proactively? Sleep, right? How are prisoners of war tortured? A lot of times it's simply by sleep deprivation. And yet that's exactly what we do to ourselves as a society. I was working with a client the other day and she's like, I was going to sleep. I was really excited. And she's like, I got in bed at 10 o'clock. I'm just going to watch one show on Netflix. It was when Ozark 3rd season had just come out, and suddenly it's 4 a.m. She watched the whole thing, right? Don't do that, right? So sleep. I know you're not a baby. I know you're not a child. And yet having a bedtime is important even for adults, right? Because we need to make sure that we're getting the sleep, that we're scheduling that out. Sorry. Next thing, exercise. We talked about exercise. I call exercise non-pharmacological Xanax, right? It is so powerful at reducing stress, at literally treating depression, at helping us feel happier, at helping our mind become more creative and effective at problem solving. So moving your body. It doesn't have to be a 10-mile run. It doesn't have to be an hour exercise video, right? 5 minutes of jumping up and down, walking in place, doing a video. I mean, there's so many videos out there. I just did I did an Instagram live with Health Magazine, and I don't get paid for that, and I don't get paid for what I'm gonna say, but as I was about to go live on their Instagram, they had a 15-minute kickboxing workout. I did it last night. It was great. I love kickboxing. There's so many free videos out there, walking in place, moving your body in any way, dancing around, excellent thing to do with yourself, with your children, with your loved one. So moving your body is going to be important. Priming your brain. Your subconscious is like a sponge, right? And if you think about it, if you have a sponge and you put it in water, what does the sponge do? Can you hear me now? Wait, Laura, can you hear me now?
I hear you. There was a participant that couldn't hear.
Wendy, okay, we're good now. Okay, I'm sorry about that. So again, our subconscious is like a sponge, right? You put a sponge in water, what does it do? It soaks up the water. You wring it out, you put it in milk, what does it do? It soaks up the milk, right? Not once does it say, I don't do dairy, right? It just soaks it up. Why? Because that's what a sponge does. Our subconscious is the same, and our subconscious will absorb what it hears, whether we agree with it, whether we want it to or not. Before all this happened, there was a research study that showed that watching the news for 3 minutes in the morning, just 3 minutes in the morning, increases your chance of having a bad day by 27%. Wow, right? Because your brain gets primed with negativity. So think about now, how much time are you watching the news or involved in the news, right? So think about prime your brain, turn off the news, don't get on the news. Or if you need to, if you get on the news and you find it interesting, that's one thing. But if you get on the news and you find that it really impacts your mood, stay away from it. And if you need to get on it, once a day, right? If anything major happens, I promise you will hear. Social media. Right? Some social media is very positive. Go to my social media. Every single day we're putting out all kinds of positive strategies and really inspiration and transformational techniques to help you stay sane during insane times. But some social media is really negative. Use the power of delete or unfollow. Prime your brain in a way. And another way to do that is with meditation. Now, I don't know if you all meditate. I will share with you my experience in meditation. So when I was in graduate school for psychology, I literally wrote peer review journal articles on the benefits of meditation, right? I knew it helped you have less stress and more happiness and your body heal better and you can sleep better and your executive functioning improves and all the wonderful things of meditation. But this is what would happen when I would try to meditate. I would sit down, I would close my eyes, and then I think, am I meditating? I don't think I'm meditating. Is this working? I don't think this is working. My mom's supposed to be quiet. What's wrong with me? And then I get up and do my list of things to do. And it wasn't until I got trained in meditation that I learned this notion, I think there's this belief, I certainly had it, that when you meditate, your mind's silent. That's not really what happens, right? That happens when we die, but it doesn't really happen when we're alive. Even the Zen Buddhists who meditate 11 hours a day, your mind still wanders. Right? So when you're meditating and you notice that your mind is wandering, just acknowledge it and move back to whatever you're focused on. So in meditation, it may be your breathing, it may be a mantra. For some people, they like to light a candle and just watch the flickering, whatever it is. So realize that your mind will wander, you can just bring it back. And the other thing that was really helpful to me as I learned to meditate, and I have been meditating now for about 11 years on a regular basis. The other thing that was really helpful to me was a study that my instructor shared with me. And the research was they had participants wear EEG leads, right? So the leads on their brain to pick up what was going on in their brain waves. And then the participants meditated. And afterwards, they asked the participants, what was that meditation like? And even the people who said, my mind was elsewhere, it was horrible. Even those people had brain wave changes, right? So even if it feels like it's not working, it does work. There's no, very rarely in my 11 years of meditation, I've never had the experience where I'm like, oh, like I'm in this blissful place. Sometimes I really go there and sometimes it's not as much, but any meditation is better than no meditation. So I highly recommend that. It's a great way to prime your brain and also to be proactive in stress management. And remembering, it's great if you could do a 30-minute meditation. 5 minutes is better than nothing. And again, it's part of that 3x5. Connecting with others. Loneliness is as detrimental to your physical health, the research shows, as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Think about that, right? That's really powerful. Now, I'm not suggesting you start smoking. I am saying that we are human beings, we are social beings, and it is vital that we connect with others. And during this time when that is more of a challenge, prioritizing and problem solving, how can you do that, right? So it may be hopping on a Zoom call, having a cup of coffee. I got together with friends from college who we haven't been together. We realized since I was breastfeeding my second child, so 13 years, we hadn't actually all been together and gone away together. We got on a Zoom call and we had this great conversation. So I say, reach out and touch someone without actually touching them, right? Who can you connect with? Whether it's family, it's old friends, it's colleagues, it's people you don't really know, but you'd like to know a little bit better, your neighbors. I will say, I was just on a call and someone was asking about teenagers, like how can we help our teenagers? One of the things that my 15-year-old, she's 15, she has some friends who are 16. One of the things that they did this weekend was, I'm in Chicago and it was finally warm. So she was sitting outside and she's studying for an AP exam. So she was sitting outside studying and her friends came over and her friends drove into the driveway. So Kelly, my daughter, is sitting in a chair, like 10 feet away is the car. The driver gets into the back seat. So they're twins. And my daughter's friends with both of them. And they were in the car. My daughter was sitting in a chair and they had a conversation for over 2 hours. So beautiful. How can you connect with others? It's not the way that it used to be. It doesn't mean you can't do it. So it really is, it goes from that learned helplessness to what can I do? Connecting with others is going to be really vital. Schedule it out. Don't say, I'll do that when I have time. Put it in your calendar. Moderate goal, we talked about this before when it comes to boredom. Same thing when it comes to being proactive and to addressing your stress. Doing something that's interesting to you. For me, I have a part of my basement that I used to call the scary part, because every time I went into that part of the basement, it scared me because there was stuff all over. And a couple of weeks ago, because we've been through this for a while, I cleaned it out. And I'm telling you, we have lived here for over 8 years. There was paint there from like 2 owners before us, right? I never cleaned this out. I cleaned it out. It felt so good. You know, just amongst us, I go down there now and I just kind of stand there and feel really good about how clean it is. So developing moderately difficult and yet meaningful goals is important. Maybe it's learning a new skill. Maybe it's trying a new recipe. Maybe it's learning a new language. Now, I say this as a suggestion if it sounds good to you. And by that, I mean, there are also some people who are feeling really overwhelmed and are feeling almost guilt that they aren't doing more. I just did an interview with Good Morning America, and we were talking about this concept of, I hadn't heard of it before, but it's great, quarantine queens, right? Those people who are baking 50 loaves of bread and posting on social media, or, you know, showing how they redecorated their entire homes. If that stresses you out, then just cross this one off your list. It's okay. This is a time for self-care. This is a time to prioritize self-care. And if for you tackling a new goal is too much, that's fine. Do not guilt yourself over that, right? But really, it's all about self-care. So with that in mind, I want you to put in the chat box, what's one thing that you can do today to proactively address your stress? Maybe you're gonna go for a walk. Maybe you're gonna play with your puppy. Maybe you're gonna call a friend. What's one thing that you can do today? Walk the dog. Excellent. Declutter your dining room table. Excellent. I can do that with my desk. Try meditation for the first time. Yay! And that's part of the gift that you're going to get. So just wait for that. So yeah, so think about this. And again, be really mindful of it. And I said this before, but 3x5, schedule in your phone so that it pops up, so that it's not when I have time. It's oh, this is my time to do this. Okay. Let's see. Moving on. Change your glasses. Okay. So when we get into the red zone, we tend to view things differently. I said that before. And there are different distortions, cognitive distortions. Cognitive just means thinking. Distortions means skewed, right? If you put someone else's prescription glasses on, everything's skewed. It's distorted, right? But when you put someone else's prescription glasses on, you know what you're seeing isn't accurate. When we use cognitive distortions, we aren't always aware that we're using them. So one cognitive distortion is negative filtering, right? You focus almost exclusively on the negatives. If you're in the red zone, you're in an argument with someone, you're focusing on what's wrong with them, right? Whereas when you take a walk, when you get away from it, you might say, I don't even know why I was that upset. That's a cognitive distortion. Another cognitive distortion is shoulding all over yourself, right? So again, I should be more productive during this time frame. That causes us to feel guilt and shame. I had a coaching client, so I was a physical therapist, I think that was mentioned, but I went to school for a really long time and I always wanted to work out at the nice gyms. So I ended up, and I couldn't afford it, starving student can't afford a nice gym. And so I actually taught group fitness for almost 20 years. So I'm a big proponent of exercise. I will say when I was in high school, I used to say exercise was against my religion. I hated it. I literally rewired my brain without realizing it to not only exercise almost every day, but to like it. And that's another conversation if you want to talk about that. Anyway, so I was working with this coaching client, and one of the things that she was going to do for the week was have an assignment to do. I would say, I don't want you to necessarily feel better with me. I want you to feel better in the real world. So her assignment was she was going to exercise 3 times. And this was before the pandemic. And we meet Thursday afternoons, 4 p.m. On Zoom. And so it was Wednesday night, and she came home, it was like 9 o'clock at night, and she's like, oh, I was supposed to go to the gym after work. There's no way I'm going to work out now. And then she starts reflecting on her week, and she realizes she has not exercised all week. And she starts shooting all over herself. Right? Oh, I should have gotten up early on Monday. Tuesday, I should have gone for a walk at lunchtime. And she's shooting on herself. And as she's doing this, her distress is increasing, right? She's feeling more guilt. She's feeling more shame. And she gets into the red zone. And when she gets into the red zone, she has an emergency therapy session with those two famous therapists, Ben and Jerry, right? So she shooted herself into the red zone. And then she ended up eating ice cream, which was completely counterproductive to what she wanted to do. So when you notice yourself shooting on yourself or shooting on others, just change that from should to would like, right? My partner should be more helpful. Well, that makes me feel angry and resentful. But when I think I would like my partner to be more helpful, then I'm gonna say, hey, how can you help out, right? So change your should to would like is a great way to change that cognitive distortion. We can talk about other distortions too if you have questions on that. But let's move on to changing your what if to what if. Right? There's a lot of fear-based what if thinking right now. What if the pandemic, isn't over? What if we don't find a cure? What if the kids don't go to school in the fall? What if my business goes under? What if? And when we think what if in a fear-based manner, what really happens is we emotionally react as if what we're thinking is imminent. Our subconscious takes that fear as, okay, I got to be scared. And so we act as if what we're concerned may happen is already happening. And so we get into that state of fear. We get into that red zone. So change fear-based what if thinking to empower-based what thinking. What if there's something positive that could come out of this? What if this is a time for me to develop habits of self-care that I can enjoy now and in the future, right? What if this is an opportunity for me to be closer to my family? What if this is an opportunity for me to make some changes within my business and really help out other people in a new way, right? That kind of what if thinking is going to be very empowering. And I will say for me, I'm a professional speaker, I'm a coach, and I go around the world giving talks. Well, guess what? I'm not doing that anymore. So my what if went from, instead of what if I never get a job again to, wow, what if I could be delivering this information in a new way? And it could be really positive. And for me, as I said, right before this, I had another workshop that I did with a group of CEOs. I could never do that if I were traveling around the world, right? So asking that what if in an empowering way will really help you feel more enthusiastic, right? And more in control. And you may find some really fun answers. Okay, next one. Be assertive. Be assertive. Be assertive. Okay. Don't ever sing in front of a group. Anyway, that's my inner critic. So maybe you remember the cheer when you were in high school or something of be aggressive. We don't actually want to be aggressive. We want to be assertive. Assertive has to do with respecting yourself and respecting others. So let's say you have a conference call, right, at work and, at home with work. It's really important. And maybe you've already told your family in the past, I need you to be quiet when I'm on conference call. So you don't say anything, right? You don't want to bother them, nag them. So you don't say anything. That would be being passive, right? You keep it shut. And by the way, if you think my partner should know, like they should know that I need quiet. They don't, right? First of all, that's shitting. We know not to do that. But also, they can't read your mind, right? So let's be honest, you are glad they can't read your mind most of the times. So being passive, I'm not gonna say anything. It's not being respectful to yourself because you're not communicating, even though you're trying to be respectful to them. Sometimes we can be passive to a certain point and then roar, shut up, right? Maybe we don't actually say that, but we get aggressive where we respect ourselves in terms of communicating our wants and needs, but we don't do it in a respectful way to others. Then there's passive aggressive, which is the worst of both, right? It must be nice to be so noisy. Not very helpful, right? So what we want to do is to be assertive. Clearly communicate your wants and needs. I'm going to be on a call from 1 to 3 today. I need you to be quiet. I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. I'm going to go for a 30-minute walk by myself, right? And encourage your family, the people you're with, your team, to be assertive. This is a time, again, of self-care, and we need to be assertive about that. Encourage that within your team. Next one, start with the end in mind. If tomorrow we woke up and all of this was over, I know, it's a nice thought, and all of this was over and you thought to yourself, I'm so proud of how I handled myself, right? Who do you need to be today? What do you need to do or not do? If you could stick a proverbial microphone in your brain, what would you hear yourself saying or not saying? Right? Who do you need to be? Think about that for a minute. Go ahead and type in the chat box one word you would love to be able to use to describe yourself during this pandemic. Because what happens as you're doing that, I'm going to keep talking. What happens is when we have that end in mind, when we have that goal, then that allows us to prime our brain to be that person. Calm, wonderful. Yeah, so if our goal is to be calm, then we're going to take steps today to be calm. Thoughtful, so patient. Oh, patience is a great one. So when we have that, priming our brain with that, that allows us then to take steps using could instead of should. I love that. So it allows us to really prime our brain. So think about that. Who do you need to be today in order to be proud of yourself? And then the last tactic that I want to talk about is be better than perfect. Better than perfect. What is better than perfect? Well, it's based on my best-selling book, Better Than Perfect, 7 Strategies to Crush Your Inner Critic and Create a Life You Love. And when the book came out, I did an interview on the Today Show. And right before we go live in front of, I don't know, 4 or 5 million people, Kathy Lee Gifford was reading the teleprompter and she whips her head over at me and glares and says, better than perfect. Better than perfect. I spent my whole life trying to be perfect and now I've got to be better than perfect. But better than perfect is actually less stress than perfectionism, right? Better than perfect is celebrating progress over perfectionism, right? So I don't know, let's say you have a meeting and it's a Zoom meeting and you realize you haven't washed your hair in a couple of days. You put it up in a hat, you make it to the meeting. It's better than perfect, right? You're feeding your kids and they're getting pasta for the 3rd night in a row. They're getting fed. It's better than perfect. Celebrating your wins and progress and celebrating it in others, your team. We need to give a lot of people grace right now. What are they doing right? Your family. My daughter the other day vacuumed and I'm like, you missed half the stuff. But I didn't say that because that would have deflated her. Instead I said, thank you so much for vacuuming. Right? It doesn't have to be perfect. Celebrate the progress. Celebrate the effort that people are making right now. It's really going to help you and it's going to help people around you with their stress. Okay, so that's what I have for you. I mentioned that I have a gift, and for Sarah, who's going to be trying meditation for the first time, this is going to be really helpful for you. So if you would like this gift, all you have to do is go to elizabethlombardo.com/relax, and you can get 3 free relaxations. So one is deep breathing, one is autogenic training, where you bring warmth to your body, and the other is a progressive muscle relaxation. And the reason why I give 3, this is something I usually people buy, but I'm offering for free this time. You feel free to share this with your friends and family, because what happens is there are going to be different ways that we react to different relaxations. So really trying out a couple different ones is going to be helpful to you. So that's my gift to you. What I want to do now is open it up and see if there are any questions. So does anyone have any questions? You can put it in the Q&A. And if not, that's okay. If people are going to ask questions, that's great. The links for help are available to add to our website. Great, that's great. Yeah, really, really important. It's a tough time, and it's unprecedented in how we deal with it and just the duration of it. You know, giving ourselves grace, giving other people grace to to realize this is a great time to learn these habits. And the beauty is when you learn these habits, when you incorporate them in your life, they become automatic, right? Just like brushing your teeth, right? You don't go through 3 months thinking, oh, man, I haven't brushed my teeth in 3 months. No, right? You do it because it's just part of every habit, of your daily habit. So what if this 3x5 became part of your habit, your daily habit? What would that do for your life? Not just now, but moving forward, right? It would be very, very powerful. And I want to say another thing. Some of the things that I'm sharing with you are, of course, gratitude. Gratitude is a great way to prime your brain, focusing on what you're grateful for. No one is going to hear that and be like, what? Gratitude helps you be happier? Yes, I know. Of course, we know that. Some of this really isn't rocket science, but it is rocket fuel, right? And by that, I mean rocket fuel will literally take you from the earth to the moon. That's how powerful it is. Knowing these things is one thing. Applying them in your life is just like rocket fuel, because it can literally transform your life. How do you convince yourself that you act? Oh, how did I convince myself that I actually lacked exercise? So that's interesting. Now I realize it was using neuroregenerative training, which is a technique that I've really cultivated after being a psychologist for 20 years. I was not a psychologist then. This is what I did. I told myself, I was very fearful of the freshman 15. So I told myself, I'm going to exercise and I'm going to like it. And every time I exercised and I started focusing on, oh, it's tiring, I would say, what's good about this? So for me, I love to exercise because it gives me all kinds of energy. I don't actually drink coffee. So for me, that's a great way to get energy. It helps me. When I was a biology major, and there's so stressed out, labs, organic chemistry, but I would actually, kind of geeky of me, I would put my organic chemistry, and when I was in physical therapy school, I distinctly remember on the Stairmaster, I would have my anatomy book, and people would come by and be like, what are you reading? I'd be like, don't worry about it, like, dissected bodies. But anyway, I would read or study while I was on the Stairmaster, because I was very stressed when I was studying, and it got rid of my stress. So focusing, first of all, finding things that you like to do. I love group fitness. I love being in classes. So I would take classes, and then focus on why you're doing it. For me, it was the energy. It was how my body felt. Exercise shows that, research shows that exercise increases our self-confidence independent of how it helps our bodies, right? So you may look better, but independent of that, it actually has biochemical changes that helps us build our self-confidence. So focus on what is good about the exercise and finding what you like to do. There are a gazillion, technical term, gazillion ways to exercise, right? To move your body. I can't stand running. I mean, the thought of going for a run is like, oh, but I love to go walking and geeking out. I love listening to an audiobook while I'm walking. It is my pure bliss. So finding things that work for you are going to be really helpful too.
Well, as we come up to an hour, Dr. Lombardo, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm just going to finish up just real quickly. So just a couple of funnies here. It says day 18 of lockdown, fill the dog with helium. Do not actually do that, please. My attorney, Amy, say that. We missed toilet paper, but now we have it. I thought this was a good one. Don't touch face. And for some people, moving from coffee to wine. So I mentioned before, I'm a little greedy. So I don't want this to be our last time together. So if you are on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, I do Instagram Live every day during the pandemic at 5 p.m. Central Time. Please reach out to me. Let's stay connected. And again, the ElizabethLombardo.com/relax is that free resource for you to begin your meditation.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody else for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks everyone for participating.